Hello, everybody. Hi, everybody. This is Ghost Kumo. I'll be commentating for the run of Super Paper Mario done here by Igrmi-san. Um, so strap in. It's gonna be a comfy evening with a comfy video game.
RTA In Japan にて、こちらもスーパーペーパーマリオを走られたジャチキンさんが今回コメンテーターとして来ております。よろしくお願いします。
はい、よろしくお願いします。ザチキンです。RTA In Japan 頑張ります。イグルミということで、気合十分の前レベルをしておりますね。
そうですね、こちら、3年前の、ジャチキンさんが走った時と同じ構図にしてみました。
ですよね。見覚えがあるなと思った。それでは、もうさっさと始めた方がいいのか。
Sorry, just making sure I got some things in order. So personally, I've done commentary for a number of Paper Mario games. I haven't run any of them myself, although I did do runs of Mario and Luigi RPG 2, aka Mario and Luigi Partners in Time. Do bear with me if I'm a little bit rusty on certain story details. This game is being run in the Japanese version, which, apart from it being on RTA in Japan, is actually faster than the English version by a couple minutes in text. So I believe. So this is actually the first Paper Mario game that has the same name in Japanese as it does in English. Paper Mario N64 goes by Mario Story in Japan, and Paper Mario Thousand Year Door just goes by the name, I believe, of Paper Mario Story. But we're just in the prologue here, introducing the game. There's about a 3.5-minute long section here of just setup. You also unfortunately miss, in the story cutscenes here, a fantastic scene.
つまり大きく変わったということで、
Um,
ください。最初のストーリーとしては、また、キノピオがマリオの家に行って、ピーチがいなくなっちゃった。マリオたちはどうせ食ったやろってことで。
so basically the whole premise behind this game, Bowser seems to be up to no good, and the Mario Brothers are here to stop him as usual. But before any of that is going to happen, we find that the princess has already been kidnapped by somebody else, and this is Count Bleck. He is going to be our main antagonist for the game. He's quite a dapper looking fellow, and his aim isn't quite clear at this point in time, but there's actually a cutscene that plays if you don't, go to file select, where you see Peach and Bowser get married, and that's basically gonna be what takes place in between this and the next scene. So Mario gets completely owned, and everyone just gets sucked into the void by Bleck here, besides Mario.
そうですね。ペーパーマリオの前作とかテキストスキップ機能ついてるのに、なんでスーパーペーパーマリオはついてないんだって。
And so essentially, the marriage between Peach and Bowser is set up by Bleck. It's all formal ceremony. A lot of people involved are brainwashed, and it's the catalyst for essentially the apocalypse. That's not a, that, it sounds like a joke, but it really isn't. So we're met here by this butterfly who wakes us up. Her name is Tippy, and she is a pixel. Pixels are sort of these weird pixely looking, pixely looking. They're these weird little vector creatures. And she takes us to the land of Flipside, which is going to be the hub world for most of this game. As opposed to the first two Paper Marios, which were sort of in the same vein as like a successor to Super Mario RPG. Super Paper Mario is a 2D platformer, mostly 2D. We'll get into that once we get into some of the mechanics of the game. But essentially, we're going to be doing a 2D platformer that has some RPG elements. There is a score, like a typical, 2D Mario game. But the score, actually, when you get to certain thresholds, that is your levels, essentially. So they're experience points, but everything else plays out like a platformer. You jump on things, they take damage.
今回は語られてないですけど、オープ
So
ニン
this
グで前
beardy
に
fellow
こ
here,
の
his name is
ゲーム
Merlin, and he is sort of
は
the
何だったのかっていうのをストーリー
grand mage of the town of Flipside here.
さあ操作が入る前に
Igrmi is
こ
just
れ
going to
は
jump off the tower here because it's slower than going down the
なんで
elevator.
すけど、こっちの
And his objective is he needs to put this pure heart, which he was just given,
この人
into
絶
the
対勝っ
heart
てできない
block.
です。
Every heart block that you put a pure heart into unlocks the next
あの
area of the game in Flipside.
まあ、お
And
客様
we need to
の
collect all
です
eight.
ね、
So
まあ、
typically,
これを全部
typical
集め
of
てくれると、
Mario RPG fashion, you need to
情
collect
報収集
seven of something. The game, this one's
まあ、あと
technically
は
eight, but the game gives you one
これ
outright.
で
So you really only have to
ストー
collect
リーと
seven
してのアメコミ系の
before you unlock the final dungeon.
アートの近くに飛ばされるみたいな感じだったかな。
But anyway, so as alluding to earlier, the cutscene triggers the apocalypse, as foretold in this book that Black always carries with him, which is called the Dark Prognosticus,
エレベーターの演
which
出
is
が見
sort
え
of
ます。
the tale of end times.
エレベーターとカットできないエレベーターもあります。
はい、ここのね、中央のエレベー
And
ターが
we need to
カッ
go
トできない
find
の
all
で、
eight pure hearts because the end times have already
で、
basically been
ここ
started,
は
as
そして、
foretold
はい、
in the Prognosticus's. You know, I'm forgetting the word
これ
here.
も全部カットできないので、
Prognosticating.
カッ
um,
トできないだけであって、カットしないとは言っ
but
てないので、後々カッ
we
ト
need
で
to
きない
save
ことになる
the
かも
basically
しれ
the
ない。
entire universe and all universes
カットできないのにカットするという
before all of them are consumed by the void. Prophecy. Thank you.
さっきもあったのが
As
マリオブラザ
foretold
ー
in
ズ
the
この、
prophecy. I
この
I was
マリオ
forgetting
ブラ
the
ザー
word
ズ
there. It was on the tip of my
出
tongue.
る前に欲しかったですけどね。
And throughout the entire game, you're going to see this backdrop of just a
で、こ
black
こ
hole
か
in
ら
the
また時間
background.
に戻ってくる
So
んです
here
け
we're
ど、
going to meet some of our antagonists. Obviously, we've met Black, but
そしてこちらは伯爵サイドですね。
you're going to see this big, chunky looking fellow. His name is
これはカットで
Ochunks
き
in
な
the
いです。
English version. Um, there's an impersonator. Her name is Mimi. Um, kind of an infamous character in this
でも
game.
この
And
ゲーム
then
って
finally, Dementio, this clown looking jester fellow, who might actually be even more
こ
infamous.
のエリアはまだこの時点で
And then here's Black's, I guess, left hand, right hand lady. She always stands to the right of him from our perspective, but it's hard to
わか
tell
り
with
やすい
2D.
ボスキャラ
And
と
her
して
name is Nastasia.
出てきます。
Nastasia has sort of brainwashing and psychic powers. Ochunks is just big and
いや、
beefy.
出てきました。
Mimi has the ability
これ
to
が実装設定、まあ序盤しかも
impersonate and be an imposter of things, and Dementia is just a powerful,
これが
clowny
つい
kind of
てきた
mage.
ということで本番が
So it gives a nice little brief introduction of the characters we're going to see throughout the rest of this game.
このステージが出てくる演出いいですね。
But we're on to level 1-1, and as is tradition with a 2D Mario game, the music here is designed to be compositionally very similar to, ground level from Mario 1, aka that song that everyone knows.
まあ1の1ということで、
Because it wouldn't be a Mario game
最
without
初の方だけ1だけ
reusing classic Mario music.
配置されてても
And even some of the stage design here is kind of meant to be like a throwback.
最初だけ。
But yeah, the goal here, we're gonna find this guy. I can't remember if his name is
次元技を授かる
I'm
た
like
めに
forgetting his name here.
言われましたので、
Off to a wonderful
危な
start.
かったので飛びを抜けて
Anyway, so Tippy has Tippy the Pixel, who's following us. She's kind of our buddy, and because Mario's a silent protagonist, also the voice. And she, if you point the Wiimote at stuff, she basically has the tattle ability, which informs you of stuff that your Goombario and Goombella would tell you of enemies.
一番コインの
But
設定
also, she can find hidden things in certain parts of the run.
許してくれましたね。よかったで
しますす。ね。
なんと1万コインだった次元技をタダで授かることができました。
So this fellow here, his English name is, I believe, Bestovius, and he gives us the ability to travel in between dimensions. And by that, I mean he lets you go from 2D perspective into this sort of 3D perspective that turns every room into a tube, and it has a left and right angle. Nigirumi is just picking up several different items along the way here. All of these are going to have very different uses, some of which take a long time before we're going to actually see what what they're used for. But in
技とい
the
う技で 3D と 2D の
but
接
with the
続を
ability
作
to
ることが
turn
できる。
into 3D, you're able to get around certain
こ
barriers
れ
that
は
you wouldn't be
最
able
初
to
の
with a
レベル
2D
にレベルを
perspective.
埋めることがあるというのが今作の特徴となっております。
Like right here, this pipe's too tall to climb, but you can just get around it by
こういう
turning
こと
into
ができること
3D.
もできたりします。
Also being able to clear this gap that
はい
otherwise would be unable to, and then
なの
walking
で、
on
こ
the
の技が割れ
background
てきたり
over
しま
here.
す。
One thing that you're actually going to see a lot of is he's going to be taking a lot of damage while in 3D.
まだ
There's a
この
meter
ボスで
underneath
は
Mario's
簡単に
HP,
ダメージを食らってしまう
and
の
that
ですが、
depletes over
簡単に
time.
倒れない
When
よう
it
に心がけ
depletes
て
all the way, you take a point in damage.
この
But essentially, what he's trying to
は
do is
簡単に
minimizing the amount of animations of turning from 3D to 2D and vice versa. Gonna kill off of these little
あ非常
enemies
に
here.
スコアを稼い
Forget
でい
their
ます。
name in English, but as you'll see,
こういう攻撃
typical of
すること
Mario
で
2D Mario games,
敵が組む
you can
力
actually
も発動
repeatedly
されてい
combo
くので、
them by
相手
not
の
hitting
敵
the
を倒
ground.
しな
And
が
so he's
ら
going to build up 2
相手
levels
の
worth of
敵を倒す
EXP
ことが
here
でき
from
ます。
just building up an extremely long combo and
そうまさに
get basically like more than half of the points he's going to need for this chapter. I believe the goal is to have almost,
まあ、
if
今回
not
の戦
slightly
いと
more
は
than
若干違うところで、ここで
60,000
ダメージを食らう
at the
っていう
end
こ
of
とを
chapter
していた
one.
ので、レベル上げまではしなかったんですが、これはレベル上げが必要なくなったということで、
You're also going to see he's going to take the
こ
damage
れはですから
when he does take the
この
damage,
レベル
he's
に
going
レベ
to
ル
instead jump. And this is because when you take damage, Mario has a little
今のとこ
stagger
ろ
animation
レ
if
ベ
he's
ル
on
を
the
上げる
ground, but if he's
と
in
いうことで
midair,
問
he
題として
doesn't
は
lose
今
any
のように
forward
表示される
momentum.
のですが、鉛筆が使え
There's
ない
a
のは
star
この
back
レベル
there,
の
and the
上では
star turns you. I believe the
まあ、この
star is
レベル
mega
で
in
は
this
こういう
game.
こともあるのです。
Either way, it lets you just clear through enemies, but it's slightly slower to get because there's a big animation before it, and you don't want to waste that kind of time
1の1を
because he's already built up more than enough points.
本来ここセーブしない方が早いのですが、今回このゲーム唐突にフリーズすることがあるので、
Yep, we're on to 1-2, and this is going to be where one of the first significant
一
skips
発
of the
通
run
し
is
と
going to
いう
be.
一発通しということでセーブしなくて、まあ、完走できなかったってなるよりかは一発通ししっかりやっていくということで、これ1の2なんですけど、ここは公式のショートカットですね。
So,
があります。
just by sheer coincidence, one little bit of trivia to talk about this game. So, this game was developed by Intelligent Systems,
どんどん
who
上がっ
has
ていく
historically been the
こ
Fire
とで、
Emblem
これでです
development
ね、先
team.
ほどのブロックは叩いたり、
So, there's actually a little bit of
この
crossover
ボ
between the
タンまで上がってい
development
るので、
staff between this game and Intelligent Systems, who made, Fire Emblem Three Houses, the game that we just saw.
フ
Um,
リーズの話を出します
In
と、
fact, actually,
こ
one
れは
thing you'll
フリーズ
hear
はダメ
with
ージを
certain
食らうという
tracks
の
in
です
this
が、
game is they were
まあ、この
composed
フリーズ
by
の方が
Naoko Mitome and Chika Sekigawa, who both did
ロード版の方が頻繁にフリーズが起こる
uh,
ので、今回は安全
work
に
on the
高速で
GameCube and Wii
で
Teleus Fire Emblem duology of Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. So there's some interesting little
まあ、
crossover
この
between
放
Fire
送
Emblem
は、
and this
まあ、1
game.
分半ぐらい早くなると言われています。
So this NPC here, he found himself stuck in the third dimension, so you need to be able to switch dimensions to
まあ
flip
唐
him
突
back
にフ
out.
リーズするので、このゲーム。
はい、本当に怖いんですよ、あれ。記憶なくなるんで、理不尽に。さて、今、レドの家に行きまして、橋を架けてくれと。
And as thanks for saving him, he's gonna open up the bridge onto the next area. You'll see a red one, but we're not gonna be seeing a green one, unfortunately.
ちなみにパッケージ版でもフリーズは起こります。
As barred from Thousand Year Door, you do have the ability to go in and out of the background through
これ、
pipes at a couple
乗り
points as
物をする
well.
わけではないん
Kind of
で
one
す
of the
が、
neat little
ちょっと
perspective
小さく
things.
ちょっと看板を借りてね、壁を抜けていきます。
看板を
Now, this skip right here actually, it's a little peculiar, the geometry in
こ
this
の
room,
とこ
but
ろ自体は有名
there's
で
some ways that you can get on the seams of
この
stuff
フ
and
ロ
get
ア
out of
は
bounds at a
成
couple
功してし
points.
まうと、
So what Igrmi is
これ
doing
が地獄
here
まで来てしまう。こんなことが
is
見えるものか。
he's using the sign in the shop to wedge
こ
himself
こから
in
行きまし
between the
ょう。
wall and then flipping perspective.
ここから一番
And then
いい
that's
と
going to
こ
allow
ろ
him to
で、
get on the seam of the
このフロ
building
ア
and
に
then out of bounds, sort
で
of.
半分こ
You
こ
can't
は
see
ダ
what's
メージを
going
食らっ
on,
て
but
し
he's
まうの
right
で、
in
それ
front
を
of the
回避
shop.
して
He goes to hit a
進む
save
ということができ
and
る
then
ので、
reloads
今
the
回は
save, and
さ
then
らに進
just
化した
a lot
対
of
策型の
weird
ルートに
stuff is
も
going to
なっている
happen
ので、
here.
調整も必要な
He's going to fall all the way out of bounds.
短縮になって
And then when he lands, he's gonna be in the background here. The camera's gonna do some really janky stuff when he flips to 3D, and he's gonna travel along a, sort of like an almost invisible, like, bridge here. Like, you just see him very faintly in the background. And he's gonna get up to a really high point on basically the Z-axis, and then fall back into bounds on the right. Once you get just enough distance in the background, you can actually fall on the other end there, and that's where the star, which you hit to end the level and get to the next one, is gonna be. Unfortunately, he missed the jump, and so he has to perform the trick again. Yeah, not having a lot of luck here. So trying it again. So this is unfortunate, but there was a trick that you could do called life shroom jump where you take a death with a life shroom and like you have I think like a frame to make a double jump to get across. Nobody liked it. A lot of people like would run without even doing the trick because it would just kill so many runs.
パーフェクトのその先みたいな感じで。フレーム合わせないといけない上に、それすらも運が絡むという超難易度技です。本来はここトルナゲールっていうフェアに仲間キャラクターがいるのですが、それをスキップするという名目の技ですね。スキップすることで3分ぐらいですかね、多分短縮になるのかな。2分ぐらい。
Looks like he's having some trouble getting this set up here.
本当にシビアな技です。
Thankfully, things in this game don't really hurt you too much, so if he's at low health, it's not really a problem. Though we wouldn't like to take too much damage because there are points where you will end up having to take damage, and it's just faster. He's really struggling on this one.
皆様応援のほどよろしくお願いします。あれ出たかとりあえず乗りました。慎重に行きます。行きました。行きました。
Okay, there we go. He was able to make the jump. That cost a bit of time, but like that skip saves, I want to say, like 5 minutes or something. One of the bigger ones of the run. So one of the important things with this game, you do have partners in this game. They're also called pixels. They're all relatively flat characters compared to like the partners of previous games. But we did, and I don't mean that as a pun or anything. Okay, saves less time than I thought. But yeah, so you do have these partners called pixels, and there's this hand-looking thing right behind Mario. The cool thing about pixels is if you beat a chapter without actually getting a pixel that the game deems necessary to beat the game, you get it for free in the next chapter. Now, some of them, it's not. Some of the pixels that like you can skip. Oh wow, that was a very well done jump there. That trick's a little weird. Trick's a little wonky. But yeah, like if you skip them, the game will give them to you. There's a couple like it won't do that for, but you get them as required anyway, so it's not really a problem. You're not at risk of soft locking yourself. So throw here lets you grab an enemy from a distance or an object and then throw it basically. So here we're facing off against the first boss of the run, which is Ochunks.
ちょっと待って
Um,
ください。高さですかね。
and Igrmi is going to grab him and throw him at the edge there, and he's going to build up a combo with every jump because he's going to trap Chunks into a loop.
というのも、
And this is just going to build up a lot of points,
設定されているんですね。
as well as kind of just keep the boss in a lock, because he likes to jump around and be really obnoxious.
スコアを稼ぐことができます。
He also performed the stylish commands, which aren't done too often, but they do give you like little bonus points.
攻撃力が上がっていくんですが、当然レベルが序盤
Also, he channels his inner Wario there when he leaves, which I kind of respect, even if it's like 7-year-old humor.
また小技が
Once again, with Thoreau, he's going to grab this enemy here and then actually deliberately take damage, which is going to cause the enemy to go upwards a little bit, and this is going to allow him to jump off of it and get to this door here, saving a platforming section.
名前なんですっけ？アイス？
アイスチェリリンですね。
アイスチルルン
And as for this, the star that we need is
で、ちょっと待ってですね。今回
it's located underneath this sort of mouth-looking entrance to this temple here.
なんて横ある
But you can actually just barely get on the seam there in 3D and hit the
ということでしました。
star to get to the end of the level a bit sooner without having to view the cutscene of opening it and all that.
あそこは青い台座の上で
So really, this game has come quite a long way. I remember I used to watch runs of this back in like 2015, and I think the record back then was like 4 hours 10 minutes. And there were only a couple of skips, but skips have been integrated into so many levels ever since then. So the time's come down from that by like 20 minutes.
がありますね。
They also started running on the Japanese version, which saves a little bit of time, even like Westerners that run on the Japanese version. And
このファイヤーは
excuse me.
どれこう難なく突破することが
And they also changed the timing. Used to be timing after credits, but now it's timing after at last input. So that also cuts down on actual, or that like kind of doesn't really cut down on the actual time of the run, but like they just end it sooner.
この先ですね。
There's some of these blocks here that you hit in the 3D perspective and it flips them to a 2D perspective. There's all sorts of little puzzles like that within this game.
スキップする。
This right here is a bit of a peculiar trick where you can get on the seam here by turning in 3D and jumping into the corner there. And this is going to allow him to get a key that's like
リミックを次の
kind of tricky to get, so that saves a bit of time on this screen.
投げるで取るっていうのが正規ルートですが、まあ、壁の中に存在しているのであれば、
Quite a lot of like seam clips and little out of bounds throughout this run.
今のは、壁を抜けるときに角抜けというものを使いました。角抜けは、マリオで、まあ、適当な地形の角に向かってしゃがみジャンプをすることで地形を抜けることができます。
他にも使う場所はありますね。あ
ないかもしれないな。
ー、なくなったんですね。私の記憶ではあった。
So unfortunately, there's no
なくなり
like see-through platform or anything to get to that door. So we need to come up here and hit a switch.
壁抜きの仕方はここで再
And this is going to do some funny little things. I don't know why the onslaught of these little spike balls always looks so funny to me. Just the sheer number of them coming at you.
ゴロンだけ。
But this creates a platform to proceed into the dungeon.
先に行っちゃうので、
待つしかないですね。
そうですね。このスイッチの順番も次元技をすることで数字が出てくるんですが、まあ、順番を覚えてるならそれを見る必要がないことで、ないということで、押していきます。
There's also a lot of these like block puzzles here, which you can see the solution if you turn in 3D, but they don't change in between runs, so he just has the solution figured out by heart.
が一面のボスですね。
And so we are on to the boss of this area. His name is Fractale, and his job is essentially to guard the Pure Heart with his life.
でかいですね。
Kind of a neat little throwback to the dragons of Thousand Year Door, in my opinion.
3桁ぐらいは普通にありそうな。
Of course,
非常に
he's meant to be a good guy and recognized as the hero, but
ね
things happen.
これ何やら検索をして、
おっと、
これスキップできそうですかね。ボス戦は、
あれ
So this is our introduction to Dementio, and he just like completely messes with Fractale's programming
あ、ちょっと何するんですか
and
あー
turns them antagonistic towards us.
せっかく逃してもらえそうだったのに。
これ404ページって出ますが、404ページでたらサイトに繋がってないだけですよ。そんなわけでズンババ戦です。開始していきます。
戦いは避けて通れないということで。しばらくすることがありません。ズンババがこっちに突っ込んでくる攻撃をとりあえず
ですね。ちょっと暇な時間です。
こちらの動きに多少ズンババが合わせるので、こうする
So I quite like the imagery of this fight, but the fight itself is remarkably basic. You unfortunately are not able to actually hit Fractale until he starts coming along from the right side of the screen. So there's a lot of waiting in the speed run of the fight.
次元技のダメージ調整ですね。
ここでズンババが正面から突っ込んでくるのに対して、こちらも正面から突っ込むことができると。ちょっとだけ
So the weak spot is the antenna on his head, and
からのを反射するということで。
there's a neat little trick you can actually do in this fight to accelerate it considerably.
このキョロルをという敵を
At first, you're just going to hit it a couple times by grabbing and throwing the enemies, but he's going to kind of loop around here, and if you time it right, you're actually able to jump across from the back end of the tail to the front.
ここからジャンプしてもう一回頭に乗ることで
There's a bit of a trick you can actually do where you switch to 3D and then switch back, and then you're able to actually jump directly on top of the antenna. However, Igrmi is not opting for that because,
技を2回
oh, he's going for it now.
とアンテナに直接踏みつけること
Yep,
が
there we go. I guess he just didn't feel comfortable doing it the first time, but that's Fractale. It's a pretty easy boss. I would say that if there's one like significant issue I have with this game personally, it's that it's a remarkably easy game in a lot of ways.
悪いこと
The speedrun alleviates this a little bit by doing certain things at a low level, and most of the strats are just kind of like these would be busted even if things hit a lot harder and had a lot more HP anyways.
マリオがいない。
But yeah, things don't hit you particularly hard in this game, so a lot of the like intrigue and difficulty with the speedrun comes with execution of its strats and its
だったかなです
and like managing everything and performing well.
話が長いことで有名なクリスタルさんです。
So the Guardian here, one of the sages, or I think they're called shamans. They're not really particularly clear in the lore of Paper Mario. As per tradition, it just bores Mario to sleep. But it tells the story of the pure hearts and all that, and gives us the second one as the hero. So 2 down, 6 to go. And that's basically it for chapter 1.
ちなみに未だにまだあんまりこう大きいなんか破壊みたいなの見つかってないので、こうピュアハートをなんか8つ順当に集めるっていう流れはやります。
そうですね、フラグスキップだけはできないみたいで、このピュアハートを持って別のハメールストーンに行くこともできるんですが、それをしても意味がないということで、
そうですね。
はい、対応してるハメールストーンに
With the chunks having failed and Dementio's brainwashing trick
ができれば
being relatively ineffective,
誰か見つけてください。
お願 願いします。
Nastasia chides Chunks here and basically says that Mimi's taking care of the next one.
あれですね、スーパーペーパーマリオのディスコードは大騒ぎになると思います。
As is typical with Paper Mario games, there's an intermission in between each chapter. Now, this game doesn't have nearly as many and as long of intermission chapters as Paper Mario 64 and Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door do. Instead, we do get this little level here where Peach wakes up in Black's castle, just kind of seeing the void in the background. I really like the imagery of Black's castle. It's just, it's got this like black on white kind of color palette that just there's like a there's kind of like this, artsy sense to it, to the darkness, like very artsy minimalism to it that I think actually really gives it its own distinct feel. So here we see basically how Nastasia basically just mind controls everyone here, so we need to be extra careful here. Peach is trying to sneak out because a couple of the Bowser minions have essentially they've woken up from their brainwashing. So they're trying to sneak Princess Peach out because they're like, yeah, there's much bigger things going on here than kidnapping the princess. Like the end of the world. Of course, there's really no way out here, and we're trapped in a corner.
逃げ出そうとしたものの追い詰められてしまい、最後の仲間も洗脳されてしまったピーチ姫、さあ一体どうなっちゃうんでしょうか。
But Peach mysteriously warps away. I don't remember the exact explanation for why that is, but either way, we kind of lucked out there. Now, at this point, instead of jumping off the tower, Igrmi is going to be actually taking the elevator. And although this is a little bit slower, it's going to put us at a bit more of a favorable position to what we need to do. We also need to talk to Merlin as well. And in his house is something called the Light Prognosticus, which is sort of the counter to the Dark Prognosticus and kind of tells of the way to defeat the Dark Prognosticus. And one of the things we need is we need to assemble a team of 4 heroes. As Mario goes to meet Merlin and present him with the second Pure Heart, though, I don't remember what the residents of Flipside are called, but they're kind of these weird blocky looking people. One of them happens to notice that that spoilers, Princess Peach has just wound up in Flipside and is completely unconscious in town. Before going to address that, though, Irumi is going to do something that he needs to do anyway. He's going to go to the town cook because cooking is a mechanic in every Paper Mario game. Her name is Saffron, and she can cook up some stuff. She's not super useful to the run outside of this one particular part, and one thing I believe later, if I remember correctly. But she can turn the fire burst we picked up back in Chapter 1 into a spicy soup, which is going to be what's used to wake up the princess. And he's going to use the return pipe, which Merlin gracefully gives you to let you warp to the top of the tower and jump off the right side this time to gain quicker access to where he needs to go.
場所から脱出し、ここに来たようですね。
そうですね。
で、熱々のスープを渡します。
寝ている女の子に熱々のスープを流し込みます。
絶対焼け出しますよね。
あなたもフハーじゃないのよ。
And so now we have the princess. And I believe this is one of like
で家に
3 games in this entire series that has like a proper campaign where you can play as Princess Peach. The others being Super Mario RPG and Super Princess Peach. But yeah, Peach is a playable character in this game, and she has the power of hovering. Unfortunately, because of
冒険に参加すると
various different speed tech, she's really not going to show up in the run very often outside of a couple parts which she's normally required for, and even those are fairly limited.
異国の姫なんだけ
Um,
ど。
but still, it's pretty cool.
ね、本当に。で、古びた鍵をもらいましたので、
But now we gotta hunt for the heart block to open the door to the next pure
ここ
heart.
の門を開けます。
And of course, a lot of that involves going into 3D, so
残念なが
you're
ら。
gonna see mostly playing as Mario throughout
次
this
は
run.
ストーンを探しに行くわけですね。
あそこピーチから始まるのミスリードですよね。
確かに。すぐマリオに交代しないといけなくなるのに。
ここで地下の方に行きますね。外部の方に行きますね。
で、ここにはいかにもピーチ姫を使ってくれというようなギミックがあるのですが、
So this section is meant to be a tutorial for Peach and her hovering ability to get from like the left end of the screen to the right. But instead, what you can do is you can bounce this enemy off of this platform here and then bounce off of it to get to the heart block without ever having to use Peach.
正規のこれこなずが、まあ、あそこに出っ張りがあるのと、ここに敵キャラを配置してしまったのが悪いという。
One little detail I haven't actually talked about with the story. After each playable character interim section, you get this little short story of dialogue and text, and it slowly builds itself over time. And it's basically, it tells the story of these two characters named Timpani and Blumiere, and that's going to be remarkably important to the rest of the story. But that's going to kind of come along as we go. It's actually one of the few Mario games that people actually generally have positive things to say about the story. It is still fairly simple, and it does have its share of, minor issues, but I think it's ultimately, like, they put more work into trying to tell a story with interesting lore and characters and all that, than I think most Mario RPG or most Mario games in general have, where the plot is just straight up an excuse to beat the game. So this level is Gloam Valley.
そしてここは
This is one of like a handful of times that we're gonna switch to Peach. Because it's just better to hover with her
ま
there.
だ空を飛べないので、使わざるを得ないということで。
One thing that's really useful to the run is if you flip to 3D or 2D and there's nothing underneath you, you can usually have an opportunity to perform a second jump in midair because the game's like, hey, you don't have anything. So Mario kind of freaks out for a second, and then you have a brief moment where you can do a second jump. It's going to be very useful for a number of different strategies throughout the run,
ゆっくり歩くんですよ。
especially once we get into Chapter 3. But you saw it for the first time there. He was on a 3D block and then switched out of it and then just jumped from the middle of like nothing, like while standing on virtually nothing.
上の土管に、届くことができます。届きます。
届きますね。ここも本来は出番だったのですが、いけてしまうのが悪い。
そうですよね。そしてこれ取りました、お助けドットというものがあります。 これはなんかちっちゃいマリオの分身みたいなのがいっぱい出て、攻撃をしてくれると。攻撃というかまあ体当たりですね。をしてくれます。これを使ってまあちょっとだけスコアが稼げますね。
スコア稼ぎと、手前の方の敵キャラの排除ですね。
そうですね。
邪魔なので。
あ、バックンフロアも倒せるって言いたかったんですけど、倒せませんでした。
So there's this little power up where you get all these little mini Marios following you, and they can hit things and also act as sort of a shield. This screen as well, I believe you can use a star on, but he's just not going to because again, those are slower.
敵も倒しつつ進んでいけると。ここですね。ここの土管に入ると、ボムドッカンという新しいフェアリーも仲間にできるのですが、ちょっとね。
So, jumping off the tip of that enemy's head there to get up to the top without having to
ここでおもむろにこう
do some finagling. In this level, there's an ally that you get called Boomer, but we're actually skipping getting him because the game will give it to us later. And instead, Igrmi's gonna use the shell that he picked up in the first level, and then hold on to it and throw it with throw to hit the switch that you otherwise would, I believe, use Boomer for.
実は3年半前もスキップする方法は見つかってたんですが、RTA では実用化できない技だったので、スキップしなかった
And
の
that's
ですが、
2-1. It's a pretty
できる技が見つかってしまって、
it's a pretty straightforward level. But now we're gonna get to the part of this chapter that I think is a little bit more infamous. The pure heart of this chapter is located in a place called Merle's Mansion. Merle, I believe, is either the cousin or the sister of Merlin. There's a full set of shamans in the Paper Mario lore that you see throughout the games.
この3年
Usually
半前
Merlin's family.
ストップウォッチを取っていたのですが、
Although Merlin's role is like different in every game for whatever reason.
そっちの
It's
方
like
で
each game forgets that he was in the last one.
というわけで、まあ
And so this is Mimi, and we don't know she's evil yet. She just kind of introduces herself as the head maid, and tells us absolutely not to go to the room in the back there that's guarded by the big blocky dog. Of course, that pretty much is a dead giveaway that that's where we need to go. So in going to this particular screen, you see a trick kind of reminiscent of a section of Thousand Year Door.
そうですね。
And you think, oh goodness, I can't get out. And the door's actually locked.
まずい。
So, although the spikes could just, murder you. What are you doing? What are you doing? Ah, there we go. They're only half of the screen in 3D, so
でこの針勝手に帰っていくので、ここに乗って上に登ります。
ちょっとした待ち時間ですね。
そうですね。危な。あ、早すぎたかと思った。ハテナブロックを経由して、鍵を取りに行きます。
so now that now that he has the key that he needs, he's pretty much good to clear the rest of the level.
だから、奥の方に行くんですが、あそこにブロックを置いているのが悪いです。
そしてここの、大番犬ですが、実はあんまり当たり判定がないので、このようにすり抜けることができます。
Yeah, it's a remarkably short level. And setting the chomp free, goes straight after Mimi, which is not a particularly good sign when the dog is chasing after the quote-unquote head maid.
胴体ぐらいにしか当たり判定がなかったと思います。これでこのステージはクリアですね。
イノにもクリアという形で。さあ、次のステージ、イノさんですが、ペアリングが
Alright, so 2-3, which is the level I like to refer to as absolutely nobody's favorite level. So because we're Mario, we have this tendency to just see a question mark block, and we hit question mark block with no regards for anything. And in hitting, excuse me, in hitting that block, we break one of Merle's most prized vases, or vase if you're weird, or British, or both.
あの壺はどう頑張っても割れます。
そうなんですよね。
But in breaking that, we need to pay off a debt because that vase or vase, if you're normal or American or both,
先にこっちに
is worth a million. It's worth like a million rubies.
そうですね。
この電流を通り
Now,
本来は
there's a very long section of just navigating around this area,
そして出っ張りに乗って
and just
するとなんと
it sucks.
なんででしょうねこれ
Navigating around this area, getting like one ruby at a time until you get up at like 100, and then you go and get like 10,000. But there's a skip you can do where you get on that little edge there with the electric platforms, and then you kind of fall off of it and then switch to 2D.
本当にこの
And so you get that second jump, and that actually gets you enough momentum that you can actually jump straight past the barriers here without ever having to get the pixel that you get in this level. His name is Slim. We'll be getting him later.
これ借金分の
But yeah, you can just straight up skip the entire level by doing that.
即編集
Having to go through multiple different sections of essentially meaningless indentured servitude labor
が、あわあわしてる
to
状
like
態で
get enough rubies to get past each checkpoint in the level
打った時の
until you can get to the end there.
奥行き
You also can spend like 20 minutes just like
それの関係で
running on a hamster wheel, which is another way to beat this
あ
level.
まり詳しいことはわかんないですけど
But
さあここも
and I think that's partly why the game
この上の方なんか判定がおかしいんですね
I think that's partly why the game lets you beat levels with
なぜかすり抜けます
なぜかすり抜けます。
without getting certain pixels.
必要なかったところで消えますがスキップされました。
And yeah, you just
やりんです。
there's a particular part of the cage there that you can just jump past it without having to get Slim. So for anyone who's familiar with Thousand Year Door but not Super Paper Mario, Slim lets you turn flat basically.
スキップされた。
There you see him.
どうなるのか
Turns Mario from like a sideways object to a horizontal object, and you can slip through the bars, confirming that he is in fact made of paper. So 2-3 done extremely quickly,
そうなんですよね。スキップできるテキストが
and we have the power that we need anyways.
側もそれ
So the spirit of Merle says that she's been trapped in this mansion
なんです消えますに関しては
and that we need to find her and save her.
できるようになっちゃいましたからね
Whereas this whole area is just kind of a giant maze in a way.
そうですね。
あサンデールがいますね
So Merle appears to tell us what we need to do next.
このサンデールって
これ
いう
も
Just
ギャフ
basically
もらって
go through this door and answer some of her questions. But the spirit of Merle appears in the background and says that the one in front of us is an imposter.
なんとこの本物っぽく見えたサンデールはなんとマネ
And so finally we see Mimi's reveal her true intentions here. Also, A, arachnophobia warning, and B, body horror warning, because
トラウマしてる。
yeah, this part is unsettling. Kind of just turns her head into a spider and spins her neck,
嫌ですね
which like I know at least a few people who found that immensely weird when they were growing up. She's also invincible. We can't take her out because she has a magic spell on her.
一応覚えてるのでねもう追いつかれることはないです
本来は迷って迷ってゴールにたどり着くんですが、まあ、道覚えてたら迷う必要もないという。
そうなんですよねあ
And so this whole portion is, if you're familiar with, I almost want to very vaguely compare it to like Metroid Fusion, where there's just the enemy in the area that kind of chases you around. Essentially Mimi is like supposed to follow you into rooms and like chase you around until you eventually get where you need to go. Igrmi knows the correct sequence of doors that he would need to go into.
やばいやばい。やばいぞ。大丈夫。
Ah, the
大丈夫。
dreaded Wiimote sensor issue. I've had that issue playing this game before, where it kind of like flashes. But anyways,
ちょっと違うんですよね。
なるほど。
so we're gonna do something a little uncouth here, and go into the ladies' restroom because
なんかちょっと普段
that seems to be where Merle's hiding.
でも何も言わずに今
And so now we have successfully found Merle,
押したんですが、そこで
and she wants to give us the pure heart and help us get out of here. But of course, Mimi's up to her old tricks.
隠れてますからね、この人。電気の中に
やばいですね。普通だったら入らないけど。
個室に隠れるのではなくもう便
And
器
so now we have to pick the correct one to shoot. Kind of get into a fight with each other.
そしてマネーラが、サンデールに化けて、こう、なんか体当たりをしまくってもどっちがどっちかわからないと。
いうことで始まる。
So the way that she wants us to determine which one is the real one is we need to ask her questions. And the game just becomes a quiz for whatever silly reason.
地味にペーパーマリオシリーズ恒例のクイズ大会です。
So ultimately,
マリオストーリー
the way you can tell the fake from the real one, I'm pretty sure it's always the one on the left is real and the one on the right is fake. But the way you can easily tell is because the real one has been spending hours upon hours in the bathroom. There's a fly kind of buzzing around her, so you'll know that that's the real one just instantly.
まあ初見の時でも分かるようにハエが飛んでるんですよね。
そうですね。よーく見るとハエが飛んでます。
トイレの中に入ってたとしてもトイレが汚くないとハエは高い。
So time for a bit of an unconventional and weird boss fight.
そんなところに入って
Thankfully, Merle's able to break the barrier
ここでマネー
on
ラ
her.
と戦うことになりますね。一応無敵の守りがあるのですが、
But
サンデールの応援によって、
this fight, she doesn't actually have a certain amount of a health. It's you just need to hit her a certain number of times. So he's gonna repeatedly jump at her and then use Boomer so that when he hits her, she's gonna fall down to the ground, and then Boomer's gonna blow up and she's gonna take another hit.
マネーラが上に上がっちゃうとちょっと厄介なので。
So very easy fight.
これで2面のボスも撃破と。
いうことで、まあ1時間足らずで2面もクリア。まあ8面あるんでね。8面4時間。まあ1ステージ30分。クソ単純なこと言いましたけど。
8面はちょっと時間かかるので、
So with that, we are done with chapter 2, and we have
1から7面は大体
3 of the pure hearts. Just 5 more to go.
まあ6面がちょっと
I always like how the pixels kind of jump out of you and just do the Kirby dance at the end of every successful chapter.
これで3つ目のピュアハート。
Now we're going to go on to one of, I think, most people's favorite chapters in this game, if only for just how goofy it is.
ここで
It's not my favorite chapter, but
というようなことを言われますね。
it's definitely a goofy one and a memorable one, we'll say that.
残り2人は大ということで。まあ1人はなんとなく想像がつくと思うんですけど。まあ想像は
マリオとセットで、
マリオとセットで。
もう一人は一体誰なのか。
Kind of a little bit of backstory on the antagonists here. So Black, his objective is basically to fulfill the dark prophecy of the Dark Prognosticus and essentially destroy the world to recreate it anew. And most of his minions are people that he basically saved along the way, and who, they owe their loyalty and their life to him. And so they, hey boss, we'll see to it that your dreams are fulfilled, essentially. So now we're in the Luigi intermission level. First time I think in any Paper Mario game you actually can play as Luigi, and perhaps the only time, unless you count Paper Jam. Just I kind of don't. So these Goombas are trying to help us escape yet again. Only things, unfortunately, are not going to go as well as they did for Peach.
リボが追っかけてきていますが、まあ、急いでるのでね、もうガン無視して突き進んでいきます。
かなり差がついたと思いますが、すぐに追いついてくる。
そんなに近くにいたっけちょっと行き止まりですね。そしてまたナスタシアに催眠をかけられてしまった。見た目あんま変わんないですね。
変わんないですね。クリボーローさんが洗脳されてしまいましたけど。
そしてもう一人のクリボーはなんと強い方についていくと言って寝返ってしまうんですね。
The Goomba just completely backstabs us without even being brainwashed because he's like, I don't want to lose my sensibilities. So Luigi gets head still, and Anastasia does her thing.
ダイヤですね、残念ながら。
いやー、勇者の候補かと思いきや。
まさか勇者ではなかったのかという形で。
You'll see after every level that the void in the background gets a little bit bigger. And kind of maintains a constant presence throughout the rest of this game, which I personally find fascinating. I think it's a really good job of just selling the point of how much is really at stake. Is just seeing the black hole get bigger and bigger.
結局のところ右から落ちた方が早いんですね、これなんと。
そうですね。右のエレベーターをスキップできるので、周りを叩きつけて、右のエレベーターを使った方が早いという形で。
So the next portion of trying to find the pure heart block. We're going to go to where we found the second one, but instead take a bit of a different path, seeing as this time we have a bomb and the ability to turn flat.
基本的に前のステージで手に入れた
As well as the ability to hover.
手についてきた仲間を使ってやるってことですね。仲間やキャラクターですかね。
But that's not particularly useful. So yeah, you blow that up.
ボムドッカンでブロックを破壊し
Worth noting, Mario's jump height in this game is actually extremely high.
2の3の最後にあった鉄格子も本来これで通らないといけなかったものだったんですね。
そうですね。体を細くして細い通路、細い格子の間を進むっていうのが本来の進み方ですが、抜けれてしまうものは仕方ない。
上の方がちょっとざるというかなってますね。さあ、この後、すぐ戻る土管で戻るかと思いきや、ちょっと寄り道をしていきます。
そうですね。
本来ゲームをもうちょっと進行させないと取れないような位置に、ハートフエールという、HP の最大値が上がるアイテムがあるのですが、なんと今取りに行けちゃいます。そしてこれが400。
And so you would think that he would return with the return pipe to get to the next level, but he actually has an objective that he wants to get to first. I believe this area is meant to only be accessed by doing the Pit of 100 trials, but there's some jank that you can do out of bounds here. You go to get this item called an HP plus, and those are extremely rare. They're supposed to give you just a +5 bonus to your HP, but Igrmi is going to be using it for something else a little bit later. and then returns back. And this is going to be chapter 3, which
大きく使うポイントがあるので、それ用の回ですね。
そうですね。
I'm blanking on the English name of it. It's a very all of its like design, its graphics design is very like uh voxely. It's like these big pixels. Yeah, Bitlands. Thank you.
大好きです。
That was the correct name for it. And so Tippy's just kind of, surveying the land. She gets just
なんだこいつ。
taken prisoner almost immediately by this chameleon looking dude. So his name is Francis, and he's one of the more remembered characters, I think, from this game. Um, we'll get a little bit more into him once we get to chapter 3-4. In that bush is an optional pixel. We don't get him until beating the game.
ピーチ姫の出番になります。このショートカット
Or no, you have to beat this you have to beat this world, but Igrmi is never going to be doing that. So using Peach here to jump across these platforms here, just barely am able to make it up to this
でここは1の2をモチーフとした、なんか
platform and pipe here.
モチーフとしてるんですが、まあ見ることなく。
ちょっとしか見えませんでした。
Coming up at the end of level 3-1 here. It's a very short level if you do that jumping trick that Igrmi did.
本来次元技を使うことで簡単に抜けることはできるんです
But
が、
once you get past all these forts here, this level's kind of set up similar to the Koopa Fortress of
そうですね。次元技2回分
Paper Mario 64. And then when you blow up this castle here, which is just an impromptu fort, Bowser reveals he was the one who was overseeing everything. And he's super happy to see his newlywed wife, and very pissed to see Mario. So it's time for the classic 1v1 fight. And Peach just had a hammer thrown at her, which didn't do anything. I don't think that was intended.
こうやって、
So the easy way to take care of Bowser, because we can't really jump on him or do much, is just blow him up.
この動きをするとクッパが火を吐いてくれるので、
You only need to hit him for 30 damage, I believe. Or is it now? It's 20. It doesn't really take a lot to defeat him.
被弾した後に出てくる
And Bowser is going to join our party. So once again, like Super Mario RPG, Bowser recognizes that there are far greater things at play than just, his desire to kidnap the princess and take over the world. End of all universes and all that.
どこでも生きていけそうな感じがします。
And also because Peach gets to go with him the entire time. So she asks him to help out, and he's just like, fine, I'll do it.
なんと仲間になってくれますクッパが。
これ第3の勇者はクッパ様だったと。
So we have Bowser. Bowser is the most broken character in this game, not even close. Because Bowser, although he can't move particularly fast, he does double damage on all of his attacks, and he can breathe fire. So if you use anyone for combat, unless you're required to use somebody else, you're probably going to be using Bowser. I don't know why they thought it was particularly a good idea to just have him double damage everything. It makes a lot of fights significantly easier. But, yeah, you get to play as Bowser, and we love him. He does have the drawback of speed, but with proper strategizing and one of the abilities we'll get later, that's not really going to be an issue.
そうですね。
So here's the obligatory water level. Like standard 2D Mario water levels, this one also kind of sucks, literally. But
ところは上でジャンプして、
there are some neat tricks that you can do on this run, or on this level. There's not a lot of like big ones,
出ないところは
but
方が入るんである。
there's a lot of little optimizations that you can do throughout,
けどまあほんのちょっとだけ
such as, getting to the top of the water first, where it's a little bit faster to move rather than swimming around.
このステージでも1匹フェアリンが仲間になりますね。
ですね。しかもかなり重要なフェアリンとなっております。
このステージだけで重要なものが2つも手にあります。
そうですね。こちらが、最重要アイテムの
And in this treasure chest is a gold bar. Now, I believe gold bars' only intended purpose is for you to sell them,
金策以外で使う
but they happen to be one of the most useful items in the speedrun for a very peculiar reason,
なんということでしょう。
which we'll get into once we see. I think it's chapter 3.3 is the first that we actually will see.
に行くことによってちょっとだけ加速を
I don't remember them all offhand, but I can tell you as they're coming up, basically.
ここはクッパで
You see some of these enemies have outlines here. Essentially, all that really means is that if you turn to 3D, they too will turn to 3D.
そうな動きが地味に厄介なんですよね。
そうなんですよね。
上行っちゃうこともあるので。
運が絡むので。
で、汁の位置も地味に
And in this treasure chest is this trapezoid-looking dude. His name is Thudley, and he is extremely useful for a number of things. A lot of broken things come in this game in Chapter 3. So Thudley's ability is the ground pound. Kind of a standard Mario ability is I think they call it a spin jump in the Paper Mario series, but it's effectively you spin around in midair and then you butt slam on the ground. And anything beneath you,
そうですね。
anything beneath you just like, will either take damage if it's an enemy, or if it's a switch, you'll press it down if you can't just jump on it.
手順を踏みます。勝手についてくるが普通ではないです。
We'll get to Bowser with Thudley later, though.
リードに関してはシステム上も
But effectively, Bowser and Thudley is a deadly combination. But Bowser and most things is a deadly combination in this game.
そうですね。
So getting a little bit of foreshadowing with a giant tentacle coming up.
そうですね。エビードンの、まあ、能力としては、まあ、杭が打てますね。
杭が打てます。
There's a puzzle with these switches here. The game has there's another area that'll tell you the solution, but
ドロップを踏むと
Igrmi just knows the correct solution.
入ります。
Excuse me. To open the doors here.
そして、クッパは、マリオの2倍の攻撃力がデフォルトであるので、クッパとヘビードンを使うことによって、マリオの4倍の攻撃をすることができると。あ、ちょっと待って。数え忘れた。ここちょっと大王ゲス、ここのボス戦の、直前でクッパに交代するところだったんですが、ちょっとジャンプの。
So as per Paper Mario tradition, one of the bosses is a giant blooper. We also get to see one of the more infamous animations of this game, which is anytime Bowser is surprised, his arms just kind of go full jet engine. Takes me back, man.
赤い触手を3回攻撃するということなのですが、なんとめちゃめちゃ早くできます、これが。まずこの時点でも
Anyways, this boss mostly operates on a fixed pattern.
一発目当てることができます。
So
一発目はなんともうこっから
essentially, Igrmi is just gonna repeatedly ground pound
上がってくるのを待たなくていいんですね。
at a particular spot until the boss dies.
どれが赤い触手なのかを分かっていれば、足なのかを分かっていれば、ダメージを与えられるという形ですね。
And so that gives us the pipe to the end of the level, which makes for a nice segue into the next level, because you see a whole bunch of trees here. And in fact, the next level is going to be the giant tree, which is my personal least favorite level in this entire video game. This is one of the more vertical levels. I would probably say that a lot of the worst levels in this game are the ones that are much more vertical, meaning that you're going up, up, and up rather than going sideways.
マリオがあわあわしてジャンプができるという仕様がありますので、これの繰り返しで無限にジャンプすることができるんですね。
一瞬だけなんか足場判定じゃないですか、そういうのが出てくるんでって形ですかね。
そうですね。
The camera also isn't the best at showing you what's above you next. So right there is the first use of what is called Thudley jumping.
技です。
It's a very, very useful speedrun technique where there is a frame during your ground pound animation where you can flip to 3D and you get that extra jump from any time that there's nothing underneath you when you flip between 2D and 3D.
ができないときは本当できないんです。
So Thudley jumping is a very useful strat in certain
クロ
levels.
スになります。
Thankfully, even though it is frame perfect, meaning that I believe this game runs at 60 frames per second, so you only have like 1/60th of a second to perform it. Um, you can, if you mess it up, it's not like, instantly super punishing, but you really want to chain together perfect ones so that you get that extra height and distance bonus. Otherwise, you can be spending a lot of time on Thudley jumping.
ここですでにプレイしたことのある人なら知っていると思うん
So
ですが、
he messed up the jump there, but it's not really a big deal.
ここの天井があるじゃないですか。ここめちゃめちゃ抜けたくないですか？
And so here we're going to actually see the first use of the gold bar that I mentioned earlier. And what you can do here is a thing called the gold bar clip.
間違えた。
If you throw the gold bar on the
間違いだそうです。
the edge of a seam in 3D, and then go to and then flip it, or then you use slim to make yourself flat. You can wedge yourself between the gold bar and the seam of the screen that you're on, and effectively have access to out of bounds stuff. So what he just did there was he got himself out of bounds, and then dropped Boomer to the platform below. And then Boomer hit the switch there, which is meant to open up this door here, and that skipped a lengthy portion of this level. I can't even stress enough just how much I dislike having to go for that switch and how much like platforming is in this level. Like, it is very annoying. So getting the gold bar clip there not only saves a lot of time, but it saves a lot of stress. So this is Dimentio. He's fighting us in his super dimension, which he says makes you 200 times stronger. Or it makes him 200 times stronger. Forgetting the fact that he's fighting Bowser, and thus he's fighting Bowser in the dimension, so Bowser's also 200 times stronger, effectively rendering it meaningless. He doesn't have a lot of HP, and he doesn't do very much damage, so the fight's kind of a joke.
なんか踏んだようには見えないのですが、敵にヒップドロップをした時のダメージが入ります。こうすることで、比較的簡単にそのヒップドロップのダメージを与えることができますね。
And as per usual with Dimentio, he just kind of screws around, doesn't elaborate, and then leaves.
水上で登っていくんですが、被弾すると下まで落ちちゃうので、地味に難しいことになってしまいます。
So that should pretty much do it for chapter 3-3. And we're coming up on Fort Francis, which is the final area of this chapter. That's also one of the longer levels in the game. I don't have as much commentary for this one, admittedly. It's a relatively straightforward idea. There's just a lot of, going from room to room, a lot of platforming. But the thing we'll see is that Francis is a colossal otaku. If you're not familiar with that, they kind of make him more into like a geek nerd in the English version. Essentially somebody who, is all up on computers and video games and just geek culture stuff. In Japanese, he's more like an anime and manga fan. Which isn't always the easiest thing to translate for kids, because not everyone really. Back in like 2007, not every kid was watching anime because things like Crunchyroll didn't exist. So they didn't leave the otaku, like, anime and manga kinds of nerdy stuff as much in the game. But his whole fortress is populated by these like maid cat robots. So it kind of tells you about everything you need to know about Francis. There's also the giant kitty door here that we need to get through to get to Francis.
進んだ先にいるのでしょう。やっぱここもそのフェアリーがいないと抜けられないギミックとかあったりもするので、
うん。まあ、後々わかるんでしょうね、きっと。邪魔なので倒しておきます。で、ここは、ボムドッカンやベビードンで揺らすことで扉が落ちてきます。
意味がわからないですね。この針の上がここ
He's going to do a gold bar clip on this particular room because you would normally need to get a pixel called Carrie here. For anyone familiar with Carrie and how absolutely busted she is, don't worry. We will get her after this chapter. This is just the one thing you need her for, and in just skipping the whole lengthy cutscene of having to get her, as well as the whole, gameplay scenario. Yeah, it just saves time overall.
怖いです。
間違えたら、
So these cat robots ask you very silly, nerdy questions.
人間のパスワード入力が失敗して
As sort of like how you get the passcodes, because you need to get the passcodes to get to the key.
かなりロスになります。
This room right here is the Paper Mario room, just covered in posters of things like you see Bo and
カメレゴンの部屋の扉を開けるために、
I'm forgetting her name, the puny sister from
そして今手に入れたのが
from Thousand Year Door. I know there's Punio, but I forget what his sister. I think her name is. I think it's Petuni.
ギミックパスワードがわかんなくて落ちてしまったら、
But yeah, now that he's on this side, he needs to do another gold bar clip. Thankfully, the nice thing about the gold bar clip is you have to grab the gold bar to perform the clip.
壁を抜けて、
So
スペースを歩いていきます。
壁の中
he basically always has access to it.
そうですね。せっかく用意してもらってるんだから使わないわけにはいかないですね。そしてこちらの部屋にはもう一つの鍵があります。
きっとこっちにそのフェアリンがいるんでしょうね。
So doing another Thudley jump in this particular screen to skip
空飛べちゃうんで。
up here.
そういうことですね。
There's a lot of sections of the game are in this area that the game really wants you to use Peach for. Rather amusingly, this platform here, I think they want you to have carry, but Bowser can just jump up to it anyways because this game's jump height is very high.
名前ちょっと忘れちゃったんですけど、この飛んでる敵をぶつけてスイッチを押すというのが、成功法だと思います。ちなみにここ、仮に無限ジャンプをして向こう岸に行っても橋をかけないと、足場判定出ませんので、これはできないという風になっております。
それは知らなかった。
で仮にできたとしたらどっちが早いんだろうな。あんま変わんないような気もしますけど。
橋かける方が早いんじゃないですかね。
危ね
危ない危ない。
え。怖え。
ここで奥の部屋に行くことで鍵の2本目ですね。入手します。
このキノコは比較的ロスが少なく取れるので、一応取っておきます。
少し HP が心配だったり、スコアも入るのでキノコを取ることで。
そうですね。
So once again, jumping on the maid cat here to get to the key.